Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webcast, JD Edwards UX1 for Security and Compliance. My name is Kaylin Hensley, Marketing Coordinator with GSI. I'm also very pleased to welcome our main presenter, Kyle Gray. Now, before we get started, I wanted to give you a chance to review our Safe Harbor Statement. Now for a quick overview of today's meeting, which will last about 60 minutes. First, we would like to take a moment to go over a couple of housekeeping items, as well as provide a brief company overview. Then we will turn it over to Kyle to get into our main presentation and demo, which will last about 40 minutes. Next, we'll take a minute to go over upcoming educational events, and then we'll wrap up with a 10-minute Q&A session. If you would like to submit a question, you can do so through the questions panel at the bottom of the GoToWebinar console window located on the right side of your screen. Please note that questions will be answered at the end of the presentation, so if you'd like to minimize your GoToWebinar console during the presentation, just click the right-facing arrow key on the top left of the console. Clicking the left arrow key will return the console so that you can input your questions. And now I'd like to give you a brief overview of GSI. GSI is a full-service JD Edwards consulting organization. We're an Oracle Platinum partner that was founded in 2004 and now has over 100 employees. We have offices nationwide and are recognized on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest-growing companies in the U.S. GSI specializes in project consulting, managed services, and cloud and hosting services, with all of our services backed with a 100% guarantee. GSI also provides a broad spectrum of business, functional, and technical consulting services for Oracle NetSuite, Oracle Cloud, Salesforce, ServiceNow, and other enterprise applications. In addition, we are a product development company that has many popular products, including Genius, which is our advanced monitoring and performance analytics solution for JD Edwards, or any business-critical system on any platform. Genesis is our load stress testing application for system design, validation, or expansion for JD Edwards, or any web-based business-critical system. G Shield is our comprehensive security solution for JD Edwards, including password reset and 2FA authentication. Rapid Reconciler, which allows you to effectively manage your inventory in transit and R&V reconciliation processes for any version of E1 or World. Rapid Approval is a Salesforce App Exchange solution that streamlines the approval request process. And now I'd like to turn things over to Kyle for our main presentation and demo.
All right, thanks, Kaylin. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
You can go ahead and click through my lovely picture. I'm sure they've seen enough of that. Oh, I see. Actually, Kaylin, would you mind just taking control of that, and I'll just tell you when to click.
Sure. Give me just 1 second.
That's how I've done it in the past. I'll get a little tutorial, make sure I'm up to par next time.
All righty.
All right. Some of these I won't be speaking to directly the words on it, so I'll let you know when at some point. I'll give you the cue. So, hello everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name's Kyle Gray, as Kaylin had mentioned, and I'm one of the security analysts and consultants for GSI, and I'll be taking you through the world of UDOs today, and how they can assist you in your security for your system. Looking at the presentation agenda today, we're going to go over some of the UX1 objects or UDO objects at a little bit closer of a glance. We'll walk you through some of the steps or describe the steps on how to enable, secure, and assign UDOs, and we'll then take a little bit deeper dive into how leveraging some of these UDOs to monitor security and access can benefit you. And then we'll go through some demo type, but examples of how to create some UDOs and for a monitoring security purpose. And then we'll do a quick recap, and then obviously we'll have hopefully time for some question and answers. All right. All right, so I'm going to start with just some UDO recommendations or best practices from what our team has seen in the field and our experience. So we'll touch on these a little bit later towards the end of the presentation once you've seen the bulk of what we're going to discuss today, and some of this will make more sense. But just a high level take a look at these. Number one, all UDOs should be enabled in the system. So that's the feature security. We'll get more into that in a minute, but this is not normally or not typically has not been done by Oracle and JD Edwards delivered. They've been open at or enabled at delivery. So kudos to Oracle there. Great job. And from a security standpoint, yes, it's you should always have to grant the access. You don't want to have to deny the access. So making sure that is enabled is key. One thing to keep in mind here that access still has to be granted. Just enabling this feature security does not allow anyone to perform any actions or anything of that nature towards the UDOs. Second recommendation is at Star Public, go ahead and grant grid formats and queries. These two types of UDOs are really, they have no system impact or system performance impact. They really ease the end user JD Edwards experience. So, and there's really no harm in them creating them at free will. They're user specific, or they can be shared, but it really does the customization of these grid formats and queries, which we'll look into in a little bit. It really does make the end user experience easier. So, second recommendation is to get those granted at Star Public so everyone can do those. The third thing is, this is just a best practice and thing to keep in mind, is that UDOs are for all users. It's not just your transactional users. This goes for your system admin folks, your audit folks. If you have internal audits, you want them to be able to optimize their JD Edwards experience. They might not be booking transactions, vouchers, those types of things, sales orders, but they still have a need and a need for a JD Edwards experience, and that's all users should have the ability to maximize that opportunity. And finally, and this is just a best practice for us, is develop a UDO plan. Develop a security strategy just like you would for any other type of security, especially your JD Edwards application security. So, and turn that strategy into a plan, and then obviously implement that UDO plan. All right, so again, somewhat at a high level, we'll tie all of those things together, and you'll see some examples of those soon. And then we'll kind of recap and hash this again towards the end. Go ahead, Caleb. All right, so let's take a little bit deeper look at some of these UX1 objects. So here's an overview of all the ones, all the objects that are available. Queries, grid formats, Cafe ones or composite application frameworks, E1 pages, one view reports, one view watch list, composed E1 pages, a little bit different than your classics, your images, orchestration components, personal forms, search groups, notification schedules, and form extensions. Okay, so we said them all. What are these things and what do they mean? You do see 4 highlighted here. We'll get to that a little bit later in the presentation as well. But all of these are our UX1 UDO types and functionalities. So the one thing to note here on the right side, you see the parentheses with kind of JD Edwards versions and stuff. Those are specific to that particular the 9.2 and that release of JDE. So some are newer, like I mentioned earlier, and there you can see which ones. All right, so let's dive a little bit further and see what each of these actually is and means. Go ahead, Caitlin. All right. So for composite application frameworks, or CAFE ones, it's a user interface framework that enables JDE Enterprise One applications to integrate with multiple third-party content and applications, as well as other E1 applications. So what does that mean? It is a CAFE one, or a composite application framework, UDO, that ties multiple third-party apps into JD Edwards and allows those to function all kind of simultaneously or continuously, depends on the transaction or function that you're bringing together. But it allows all of those components to work together with JD Edwards. So it is a very nice UDO to have at your beck and call. Classic E1 pages, these are probably what most of you have, or some of you may have in works already or in place. These are your pages that enable users to work on multiple E1 applications. So classic pages are comprised of HTML files, and they can contain any HTML-enabled functionalities, such as your process flows. So you could have a whole entire AP process on one page. You could have URL links to web pages or external web pages that are part of that particular process, company logos, and so on for those types of pages. So you're probably already acquainted with those and know those, but that's one of the main UDOs in the JD Edwards world. OneView reports, it's a BI or business intelligence publisher data model, or a BI publisher report, and the report definition for the OneView report, which is the metadata for the report and resides in JD Edwards E1. Personal forms, their customization of the E1 application's user interface by an interface that does not require any form design aid, FDA, based modification. So what does that mean? Basically, it's a fully customizable form, or fully customized forms of JD Edwards applications for basically a new end user look. So very, very unique in that standpoint, but you do see the parentheses there, and it's only available in certain releases dating back to JDE. So search groups, search criteria that you can design to create for records across transactional or master data within Enterprise One, and it's utilized by the search feature. In essence, it allows for a much wider range of search criteria to be defined, such as like a transactional process, like before, a full AP process, or even bigger than that, instead of an individual task or an application, like we'll see in some of the queries coming up. Go ahead, Caleb. All right, continuing, we got a couple more to talk about: the notifications, schedules, and form extensions. Notifications is a little bit of a new one, as you can see, the 922, but it's components created in E1 Orchestrator Studio that enables the system to notify users of business events as they happen without the need for the user to actually be online to get notification. So for example, a user wants to be notified, and that notification can either come from text or email when there's a breach of a certain predefined business event. So take sales orders. So let's take, there's a predefined setting for any sales order that's entered or approved for $100,000 or more is alerted to a certain individual or individuals within the company. This would be an instance where once that sales order is entered and approved, or whatever the settings are, that individual would get a text or an email, and if there's action needed to be taken, they can obviously, they know in the forefront, and they can log into JD Edwards or get to the office where they can get to JD Edwards and see what's going on and possibly rectify the situation before it's too late. So notifications is a big one. Schedules is components created in JDE Orchestrator Studio, again, that define how often the system should execute a notification or orchestration. So again, back tying into your notifications, you can set how often you want these schedules or these things to come out. If it's every time it's breached, if you want to report no matter what of every week, those types of schedules can be set up. And then finally, form extensions. These are extended forms that enable users to add unused business view columns, basically, as additional form controls on the form header and grid without that FDA requirement or the form extension capability is available through the following forms, and as you can see here, it's the find, browse, search, select, parent, child, the header detail, header list detail, and then the power browse. So another unique thing that they have offered, and it's in a much later release of 9.4. So this is a much newer UDO. Okay, Kaylin, go for it. Okay, so enabling, securing, and assigning our UDOs. We've learned what, or we've listened or read about what UDOs are. Probably still a little hazy, so let's take a little bit deeper dive and see, get a little bit more acquainted with our UDOs and how to use them. All right, so identifying, enabling UDOs security features. So again, here's where we're going to, the words feature security came in. This is the activation or deactivation of each UDO globally in the E1 system. As mentioned before, UDOs were not originally delivered secured. They were open. Now that has changed. Again, thank you, Oracle. So you have to go in and activate these UDOs before anyone can use them. So we'll walk through that in a little bit, and we'll show you how that's done. View security, action security, and content security all pretty much speak for themselves there. View security, you're going to tell which user, which role, or star public, if you will, what UDOs they can view in the system. Action security, just like it speaks, you're gonna again tell which role, user, or at the star public level, what actions they can do with certain UDOs. You can prohibit them from doing anything with those UDOs, or you can give them full access to those UDOs, or bits and pieces. Again, we'll look into that in a minute. And then finally, the content security, this really only applies to the CAFE ones, the composite application frameworks, again, because of the third-party interactions of the multiple applications. So it brings all of the content together and allows you to enable which content you want to have enabled in the system. So breaks it down that way instead of enabling them all. All right, so starting with enabling feature security. I've got screenshots and some, basically this is some how-tos, so I'll walk through it and we'll go from there. So hopefully I'm not going too fast. First and foremost, since we're here for the security, I use the security workbench for most of my my examples. But for enabling feature security and any of the other security, you have to use the security workbench. As you can see here, you navigate to P00950 or security workbench, or if you have FastPath or a menu. Once you're in there, you use the form exit and you click on the feature security right there in between the highlighted marks. Then the screen on your lower right will pop up, and here are your feature security enablements. As you can see, the green obviously is going to mean good, it is enabled, and red is not going to be. As you can see here, the only one at this point is queries that are not enabled. So all we would do was simply click on that green or the red box, and it would turn to green. And there actually is no saving for that. It is automatically saved. So then we would click the X on that, the close program, and go ahead to the next slide, Kaylin. And we go back into it just for my double check process. Being a security guy, I like to make sure that that change actually took place. And as you can see here now, the query has the green dot. So everything is good. And that is all that there is to enabling a feature for UDOs. And as you can see here, each UDO is right there, the CAFE ones, composites, the orchestrations, the queries, OneView watch reports, those sorts of things. So that enablement feature is very simple and very easy, but it must be done before you can use anything again. All right, Kaylin, head to the next one. All right, so we're enabled, we're ready to use these. Who's going to use them, or how do we want to secure them? There's two types, again, action and view. Starting with action, again, going from our security workbench or P00950, we would go to the form exit, the user defined objects this time instead of feature security, and we click on the action option. And then once in that program, go ahead and click the plus button. It'll be a blank screen. You can go ahead and click the plus button. That'll take you to the next screen that Kaylin's going to take us to. And this is where we can define the security for a particular user, role, and or object type. So for this particular one, we're going to give access to, you can see here the help desk, that's in the user role QBE there, header, and then the object type is going to be the composite pages. We're going to use composite pages because we're going to use those later in the presentation. So as you can see here, the help desk, I don't want them to have modify. So they're going to be able to create, they're going to be able to publish what they've created, but they're not going to be able to modify anything that's already been published. So either they can bring something from themselves, but they cannot modify any others. So they're just going to get create and publish. That's why they're green. Simply check them. As you can see, the bottom line that has nothing in it, that's the next line available if we were to enter another record simultaneously. They come blocked, as I said. So just in order to get them to green, just simply click on the red box. It'll turn to green, and then this time you actually do click the green check mark to save. Head to the next slide, Kaylin, and we'll again do our double check, but it gets out of that program, so we don't really have to go back in. We can do a find here, and you can see that on our third line, there's one that looks a little different, and that's our help desk access to the composite page and the object type column, and they have create, publish with no modify access. So this is just confirming that the action security record for our UDO that we entered actually took and is in the system. All right. We've now gave action security to a UDO in a role. Now, obviously, that's not just one thing, not just that one that would happen. There would be probably a slew or a plethora of access that need to be given, but that right there is all that is to granting action security to UDOs. So view security, we've enabled it. We're able to use it. I have the ability to create and publish it, but I can't see it. I can't view it. So we have to give view security. Back to our P00950 security workbench program. Excuse me, and user-defined form exit, user-defined objects, and click on the view option this time. Once again in there, click the plus sign so that we can add the view record for the UDO. Go ahead, Kaylin, and there we are. And down towards the bottom there, you can see that, again, the box in the second line is red, which means it's blocked. That was the way for the help desk too. Click on that, turns green, save it there, and make sure that we have the composite in the help desk again for those that have to match what our action security record was, or that would be a little different if we gave help desk view security to an E1 page here versus a composite. They would be able to view E1 pages but not create and do anything with them, but they would be able to create and do things with composite pages but not be able to view them. So really they wouldn't be able to do anything with composite pages. So just double check your entries here and make sure that your object types and your user roles are the same for what you're entering for view and action, and they match, and then click your save button, and you have now given security or assigned security to a user or role for a UDO, and you have enabled UDO features. I think I was long-winded and said all of that in maybe 15 to 20 minutes, and that's about all it takes to at least enable and get a plan started for assigning action and view security. All right. Okay, so now that we have all this and we're able to use these UDOs, how are we going to leverage the UDOs to monitor our security and access? To make it more efficient and effective, if you will. Go ahead, Kaylin. So the how, the what next? Your brain's spinning probably. Well, what does this mean to my system, and how can I leverage UDOs for a more efficient, effective security monitoring? So you might remember that there were 4 highlighted, and they're right here in front of you. Again, the grid formats, the queries, the watch lists, and the composed E1 pages. We're going to dive into these a bit deeper and then actually get to our examples of how to create these in a second. But these 4, and you'll see, have a big correlation to how security can be monitored and then handled. All right, so let's take a little deeper look. Grid formats. It's a selection of columns you choose to display, the sequence in which you want them displayed, and how information is displayed in your grid. So basically, they're customized or personal grid layouts. That grid layout that we just saw for the P00950, you'll see in a minute where I've created a grid format, and it's much easier to use and to see and obtain the information that you as the end user want. And you also have the ability to change your view, which is the table view or list view, but we'll use the table view. Queries, these are fields or QBE columns that you select from a form and add conditions to in order to make the search criteria more specific. Again, we'll get into an example, but these query controls, they appear on Find Browse programs, Search and Select programs, Power Browse forms that have the Find button, and they also connect to data browser. So you can rely on the data being accurate and sufficient when you set up this query. All right, so watch lists and composed E1 pages, last two. Watch lists are a collection of items that match user-defined criteria. Again, that user-defined criteria, think queries, user-defined criteria, and contain information to which users have selected to be alerted. First bullet point here is they're tied to queries. That user-defined criteria, again, provides alerts when certain criteria or thresholds are broken. Now, this is in JD Edwards alerts. These are not the notifications that were spoken of earlier. Again, we'll see in a minute. It allows for easier and more effective security and access management because of those alerts. And something to keep note of, which I'll show you a potential way to get around it, or at least a tip, is these are secured from row and form exit applications. So, for instance, the example I have coming up is for security history. Well, security history is a form exit of P98 LPsec. So, or P98OWsec. That's not going to be, you're not going to be able to use or leverage a watch list for security history. That just didn't seem correct. So we played around, and just because it's in a row or form exit does not mean you can't have it. So we'll get into it in a minute and show you how you can create a watch list on a row or form exit. And then, oh, sorry, Kaylin. And then the one last thing is the composed E1 pages. It's an E1 page still, but it's with user-defined layouts that enables users to access designer panes, the watch list panes, classic pages. So basically, you can take some of the other UDOs that you've created and compose a page based on these UDOs that is way more efficient for use, especially from a security and access monitoring standpoint. So we will get into that in a minute too. And then a couple of things about composed pages. There's no HTML coding knowledge required. You know, the classic E1 pages have all the HTML files, so that's not needed for these. This is just strictly end user manual setup. And it's created using the JD page composer. We'll see in a minute. Again, I mentioned manually, and it provides shortcuts to queries, watch lists, or other critical reports that have been set up. And then again, just like the classic pages, this is the first screen that the end user will see when they log in. All right, Kaylin. All right, so I've talked about some of these examples that I have. So let's dive right in. Let's start with examples of grid formats. So as you can see here, this is working with user role security, so P00950, and I went ahead and clicked search so you can see all of the grid filled in, and that you can see the scroll bar. It's, if I had to guess, a little less than half, and you'd still have, or double. You have to scroll over about double the length. So this just, we don't need all this information. Some of these columns don't even have information in them. So we would want to set up a grid format that fits our needs. So we're going to walk you through it. Let's go to the next one, Kaylin. All right, so bear with me with all these screenshots and arrows. So in the grid format manager, well, where is the grid format manager? If you looked at the previous slide, there was a little icon right up next to where your grid format is that you can click on, and that's your grid format manager. You click on that, and this left window will pop up. It has all of the available columns on the left, and then the ones that are actually displaying in an order, which at this point you should see them being exactly the same because it hasn't been altered. So left and right here on the left screenshot, the display in order and the available columns, this is where you toggle on what you want to be displayed in your grid. So you can choose what you want and move them out of the display in order back over into the available, and you'll have your personalized grid. You can also define or personalize column formatting. So on the right screenshot, you can select the column design. You can change that if you like, and you can even change the color that the column has. So if you want to flag columns with a certain color of importance, you can do so. And then obviously, once you're done with your construction or your grid format manager creating it, click the save button up in the top left corner of it with the green check mark, and you will have what the next slide will show us. All right, so you see you highlighted up here. When you say that and you exit the grid format manager, it should automatically bring in your grid. If it doesn't, here is highlighted right here on the screen. This is where you would select your grid. Go ahead and select it. You'd select the drop down. You can either say show all columns, or however many other grids have been created would be there if they're shared. And then obviously ours right here, it's security sec test grid. So I chose, because I wanted certain aspects of data in here. You can see it's trimmed up. There is no scroll bar anymore. I only wanted to know the user role, object name, sure, the object description, just in case I didn't know, the security type and description, and then I wanted to know the main security types, application run and install, and then our action security of add, change, delete, OK, copy, and scroll. So very cool. It decreases delays in retrieving your data. It also, when you export this, it's going to export it like this. It's not going to export it with all the other columns that you have to then either hide or delete, and it skews or can skew with your data. So grid formats, this is also why this is recommended to be at Star Public and granted to everyone. And then, well, the last bullet point, enjoy your new grid. All right, Kaylin, let's head to the next one. So queries, you can see with that highlighted, it's not a caret, but icon, if you will, on the screenshot. That is the query manager. You click on that, and this query manager opens up. It looks robust right now, but that's stuff that I have added in there. So for this example, anyway, we're going to use the security workbench P00950. Or you can use any JD Edwards application, but you have to be in that application to set up the query. So you click on the query manager icon and you select the criteria for the query. So what do we want to go through? Caitlin, go ahead to the next slide, and I think I can. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. So what are we wanting to? What is this query looking at? What is this telling us right here? I have chosen in this middle section, the conditions section, I've chosen the user role, object name, add, change, delete, and security type. So let's look at it more in depth. User role, I want to know if it's not equal to sysadmin, if the object is equal to star all or all objects, and then I want to know if add, change, delete, access is all yeses for security type 1. So to recap, again, I want to know what roles or users in the system have all action security, type 1 security yeses, to star all or all objects in the system except sysadmin. We all know sysadmin has star all yes. That's your system administrators. Those are your high level godly type access, if you will, folks. So we don't need to know that for this particular query. We want to know who has it that doesn't have sysadmin. That's what we want to know. So this query is set up for that purpose. We can add other things down here, as you see the plus signs, or I left a little bit of the screenshot just below that yellow arrow. You see that plus sign in the QBE field for data item? That's also how you can click plus, and it'll go into your conditions. So you can either do it from the actual grid in the JD Edwards application, or you can click it down here under the additional field selection. They are the exact same thing. If you click it down there, it'll pick it up from the actual application. Once you've set our parameters, we'll click our save button. It'll ask you to give the query a name and to save it, and then exit the query manager. So you'll do all that, and then we will head to the next slide and check out what our query looks like. Okay, so we saved it as full action security. So full action security, this is our query. Again, just like the grid format, this would probably or should probably auto filter in here. If it doesn't, here's your drop down arrow and here's your under the query section, and just choose your query. As you can see, the grid then condenses, and I get to see the user, the object name, and the security type and short description. But I'm seeing other things in here as well. So what's something we could do, to enhance that? We could also throw in a grid format in there that we had. So thinking back to the grid format we just had, some of these things probably sound familiar. So to the next slide, Kaylin, if we apply the grid format to it as well, the sec test grid we talked about, now look at our grid. Now look at our results based on our query. Much neater, no scroll bar, no, well, there's a couple of dead, but no, in essence, no overhead, or you've gotten your answers right here on the screen that you want. All right. So, watch lists. We're going to touch on watch lists, on how to create it real quick, and then there's actually, you do something else with the watch list after. So we're going to table it and talk about our compose pages, and then we'll come back to our watch list. So, but for watch lists for now are created from the same application used to create a query. So if you're going to create a watch list over a query, it has to be done in the same application that the query was created in. So we're going to go back to our security workbench, and the flag right here that is highlighted is the watch list flag. So you click that, it opens up the watch list manager, and same thing as before. Excuse me. You have criteria to enter. A little bit different criteria. The first thing you want to do, in my opinion, is down here where the blue star is. Which query are you going to use? If there's more than one to choose from, make sure you're choosing the right one. For ours, we're going to choose the full action security query, and it also shows the query details, which is very cool. So these should all match the query criteria or conditions that were previously set. Then we want to give our, well, that name would actually say create, and it would go after we click the save button. But we want to give our name, give the query or the watch list a name. We want to give it a description if possible, and then the thresholds. So we want to say we're watching who has access, what role or what user has access to star all objects with action code security of yeses other than sysadmin. So we're going to set the threshold of it's going to warn us for 5 people or roles, and it's going to give us a critical warning for anything over 10 outside of sysadmin, remember. So those are our thresholds. It depends on, all thresholds are different. They can be high, low. It all depends on the user base you have, the type of UDO, or the type of query you're attaching the watch list to. So that is a very changeable number, but for this we're going to use 5 and 10, and then obviously under the advanced options, these don't normally get changed. I think these are default, but you can have the watch list update every 60 minutes, every day, every week, every hour. Again, depends on the business and what the watch list is overseeing. So some unique features, and then finally we need to save it so that our watch list is tied to our query, and we can head to the next slide, which is going to take us to compose pages. But the watch list at that point is created. It's attached to the query, and as mentioned before, we're going to come back to that in a minute on how to effectively use your watch list. So compose D1 pages. These are the pages that they're not the classic. These are the ones that you can tie in other UDOs. You see where I'm going, queries, watch list, tying them into our compose D1 pages, so that it creates a mainstream or all of our access on one page, the main page of JD Edwards, which is our compose page. So again, going to the manage content and compose pages feature here, you can see in the screenshot, you'd click the down arrow or the drop down arrow by where it says JDE. It would probably say your last name or your user ID there. and then click Manage Content to get those drop-down arrows, and then Compose Pages. This is where it's gonna take us to the Composed Page Creator. Next slide. All right, so here it is. So from here, this screen will pop up. You'll see these two, not the designer page yet, the thing right in the middle, but the two Oracle JD Edwards things on the side. They're just quick tips on how you can create. But I also have arrows here to show you. So you'll click on that little plus sign up there. It'll bring up this, we call it the designer pane, or choose your, select the content type for your workspace or your composed page we're about to create. For a composed page, we choose designer pane. That way we can use all of these others in our designer pane if needed. All right. So then it's going to ask you to create the link to the designer pane. So we need to give it a name, a description. And here's where you can, and this is where the manual part, some of the manual part comes in. You get to manually design how you want it to look. You can give it up to a total of 5 columns and 5 rows per section, and there can be multiple sections per page. So for this one, I limited it down to 2 columns, and I went ahead and put 5 rows per column. But those are all, it just depends on what you're trying to design for this particular page. All right, continuing with our composed pages. Now you can see that here's our design pane right here, the 2 columns by 5 rows. In each of these columns, you'll have each of these blocks, you'll have the ability to click, there'll be a plus sign in there. You'll click that plus sign, and this is where you go to configure your tile. Configuring the tile, what we're going to do for this, I'm going to show you, we're going to do it a couple of different ways. We're going to tie in some straight applications, so where it's almost like an E1 page where you click on it and you can go straight to that, whatever that application is. So that's all done through here, but it can be done, as you see, by application, UBE or batch version, task ID, which is very cool. It ties into your task view. Everything needs to be set up accordingly to do so, but that's a very unique feature within its own right. And then our watch list and ADF application. So our watch list is we're going to tie into here in a minute. But for this, again, we're going to use application, just the program number. Next slide. So as you can see, I choose application for tile type. I choose insert the application ID. So for this one, it's going to be the 95921, which is the role relationships table, the user role relationships table. You can choose a form ID. I just chose the basic form, which is adding roles to users. Version, if there's a specific or multiple versions that you would like to be called. You can also change the style of the box and the color of the box. So you see up above the security workbench, that one was created. That's P00950, and as soon as you click on that, that takes you straight to where some of our other screenshots were, right into the security workbench. This one you see with the red or the white center and the red outline, that's just simply because I changed the style and color. It's not a warning. It doesn't mean it's different. I could make this look exactly like the security workbench or the user role security one, but just showing you the options you have out there. So, and then you obviously have to give it a title, description if you want to, and then you click OK to confirm. It will ask you to click the save icon. Go ahead and click to the next slide there, Kaylin. So once we've composed our page, we got those 3 things in there. We've got we've inserted our roles, user role allocation program in there. Now we need to save it. So we click the save button. It's going to ask you to give it a name, and you can name it anything you want. For this, I called it security and access monitoring. And then your page is available to you at that point, which we'll see on the next slide. Bingo. So that is the high-level way of creating a composed E1 page. You can enter it by application, like shown, task ID or anything, and this is what your page will look like. Again, that role relationships looking different has nothing to do with it. If you look in the, that's just a different type or style. Not the top blue line, but the second blue line that has all the writing. You can see that the naming convention that I gave it, security and access monitoring. that shows up. So you know that you're looking at your page and it's not something someone else could have created. And we gave it a little default name too of security monitoring. There's a lot of other things you can tie in here, but for this, excuse me, for this exercise and example, this was a good one. This was perfect. So you can see that it's not hard to enable a feature, give security to a feature, to a UDO, and then actually implement a UDO. It can be very easy and very beneficial to your users. All right, Kaylin, head to the next one. All right, so this is clicking into the security workbench. So using that first E1 or the compose page, excuse me, the security WB workbench, click on that, and this is what it takes you into, right into the P00950. So you know that it's working correctly. It didn't take you to another program or another version of the security workbench, but it does show all the columns. You're like, well, last time I was in here, I have specific columns that I'm looking for, I'm wanting. There's your little show all columns drop down box, and as you can see there's the security or sec test grid. So you can select that and it will show you your personalized grid, which you'll see on the next slide that Kaylin heads to. There we go. There's our nice, neat, non-scrollable grid with our color-coded column that we designed. So now you have a compose page when you log into E1 that you click one button and you're in the security workbench. You may have to click another button, but it should remember your preferences and remember that security test grid, and this is what you'll be opening up from your compose page. Worst case scenario, you just click the drop down and select your grid, and it automatically brings your grid up after that. Very cool, very effective use of UDOs for security. And go ahead, Caitlin. And then I said we'd tie in our watch lists back into our pages, so let's do that. Going back to our designer pane by going to manage content and then compose pages, we want to select our access monitoring page here, and you can do that by up in the top, the description, you see the security and access monitoring. That'll be a drop down there, and you can select the one and make sure you're adding or editing the correct one. Again, the blank spaces here that you see in the grid will have a plus sign in the middle of it. You click that plus sign and it will bring up this configuration tile. Again, before I showed what the drop down tile types options were, but for this one we're just going to show the watch list. Once you click watch list, it changes some of the criteria here, and you're able to look for your watch list. You can also look for other shareable watch lists out there, but for this purpose we need ours. We called it full action security, right? Well, there it is, right there for the watch list. We can change the default style and color again if we want, and then give it a title and description. So after we're done with this, we click OK. And we head to the next page, and there is our new watch list on our new compose page. Now you see a number on that watch list and you see a yellow flag. If we could converse right now, I'd pose a question and say, does anybody know what that is? But since we can, I'll go ahead and answer for you. That number there is the number of action security record or users or roles that have full access action code security in the system other than the role sysadmin. So there's 6. So we defined, if you remember correctly, we defined it, the parameters as 5 to 10. So we're within the 5 to 10. 5 was the warning, so that's why the yellow flag is there. If we were at 10, 11 or more, we would have a red flag there. So very cool feature. You log in, and if this, there's a flag there, you're going to notice it right away. It's going to catch your eye. You're going to say, oh, I've got something's happened. I don't remember assigning it, but I don't have to go troubleshoot a bunch. Let's just click on this, and it's going to show me exactly who has that access. So let's do that. Let's head to the next slide. And there you go. So this criteria should look familiar. Here's our green again, and here's our 6 that should look familiar. I went ahead and pulled up the watch list manager again. just to show you what our criteria was, and again, why that flag was there. So it was within this threshold that we set. So that's why it was flagged as yellow. If it goes above the critical, then it's going to be red, and obviously that's going to stick out, and you're going to come in and you're going to wonder, you know, what's going on. But you'll have an easy way to come in here and figure out what's going on, to then put a quick course of action to remediate any clerical or mishap errors. So, and again, the watch list parameters, they can be adjusted at any time for yours. If you have the ability to modify others, back to that action code security, you can do so, but yours are always modifiable in this watch list manager, and you can save the changes and or just create a new one. And there was a tip that I came across, well, not a tip, but I have a tip, but there was something I came across regarding watch lists. Watch list functionality is not available for a row and form exit applications. I may have mentioned this earlier, but now we'll get into it a little more. However, if you navigate directly to the application or form, a watch list can be created, so the functionality appears. So let's take security history as our example. Excuse me. So we fast path to security history, or we get to security history when we go to form exit and click on security history. We're now in an application that is a form or row exit of another application. This is where it's not allowed. So the watch list icon that we would normally click on over here would not be there. It would disappear. So the way around that is to go directly to that form of that application. So you can see here, if you have FastPath, this would be the easiest way to do it. If not, you may have to do a little configuration to set up either a role or access on the task view to get to that, but it can be obtained. So you go directly to the program or the application, and you put a slash with the specific form that you want to go to. So you're going directly to that form now. That's what we're seeing in this screen here, and that's why I have the query manager open, because it was available. I just happened to show you that's how you do it. So then again, you can set your query up on security history now. So let's take the parameters over here in the lower right. The event type updated by and the roller object. The event type is 13, which means, well, drawing a blank, excuse me. Users or role assignment, excuse me. So if a role has been assigned to a user, and we want it not equal to kgray, and we want it to the role to be equal to sysadmin. So I want to know who's assigning sysadmin other than kgray, which would be myself. So that's what this query is going to find. So we click save just like we would do before. We would go to our next slide, and we would have we then would be able to, let's just say, tie the query into our composed E1 page. So we create everything else is the same. The only point that I wanted to make out of that last slide was that if you're not seeing the ability to create a watch list that over something you were potentially able to create a query on, it might be because you're in a form or row exit. So if you have the ability to avert going to that application that way, or that particular form that way, do so, and you should have the ability to perform all of the previously mentioned steps and get yourself a query in a watch list on your composed page for that particular application. And now here, because we set the threshold lower for this, I knew it would go over. Here's our red flag because there's 67. So this is a warning. You should see this. You might see both of these if both of these are on your main screen or your E1 page or your security monitoring composite page, and you'll see these and be able to click on these and go in and immediately find out or figure out what needs to be done. Almost done. We're running up on our time here. All right, so then you click on that, and then you can literally come in, and I just wanted to show you what that looks like. But so you can see the event status. It's showing 13s, has a couple of 01s in there, and then it shows you the username and all of our event type. I'm sorry, it's not the event status. The event type, it should be showing all 13s, and it does. And then the username, and it shows you which role over here in the corner. So everything is in a nice, neat grid for you that you can solve any issues. All right, next slide. Okay, so back to this, the recommendations and best practices. So let's recap everything we've kind of learned today, hopefully. I know we discussed a lot, you saw a lot, there was a lot being shown to you. So just to recap, all UDOs should be enabled in the system. They don't come this way anymore, so it doesn't hurt to go in and just enable them. That does not grant the access to the users. Go ahead and grant access at Star Public for grid formats and queries. You've seen how easy those are to create and how beneficial they are to the end users experience in JDE and their, I hate to say it, but their frustration level sometimes. It just makes the JD Edwards experience or interface that much more enjoyable and easy. And then UDOs are all for all users. Most people know this, but some don't. They think that the UDOs are only for their end users, their transactional users, their APs, their GAs. No, they can be for business analysts. They can be for your audit teams, especially your security. We just went through all these examples. Your security administration team. So look at it in a more broader sense, so you can plan properly and assign the UDOs effectively and maximize their use. And then finally, develop a plan. Create a consistent and sustainable view for your UDOs. One that is understood and adhered to by the business, for one. But develop the plan, or the strategy, put it to a plan, and put the plan in motion, basically. So go ahead to the next slide. There we go. Oh, okay. So I'm just going to recap go over some of the offerings real quick that GSI has. Go ahead to the next slide, Kaylin, and then we'll get to questions. But our security team is pretty robust. We do have a wide range of knowledge and some really talented guys on the team. So we have anything starting as low as as a security assessment. If you want us to come in and tell you where your state of security is for the company and give you some recommendations on process improvement, or even some of these other things on here, security optimization, audit and SOX compliance, if you have audit requirements or have recently had some failed audits or bad audit reports, we can simply come in and give you a security strategy and design session too. If you have the hands or the willing, or the able bodies to perform an implementation, we can come in and help you with the strategy part. But with that being said, we also have the ability to come in and do the full service security implementation as well. But we also have a very skilled secure care team that if any of these UDO or any types of security are giving you nuances and you would like to reach out and look for some help, that is something we absolutely do as well. So I think, Kaylin, if you head to the next one, you might have some. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Kyle. Unfortunately, we will not be able to get to the question and answer portion today since we are running out of time. But for any questions that we were not able to answer today, we will get back to you with those answers for each question. And as a follow-up from today's webcast, we ask that you complete a short 1-minute survey when you exit. You will be receiving an email with a link to our resource center on our website where you can access the recording from today's webcast, as well as a copy of the presentation. After today's webcast, we will do the drawing for the $25 Amazon gift card, and anyone who attended the entire webcast will be eligible. We will notify the winner. Thanks again for attending our presentation, and have a great day.